begin with the line, inaudible to our deaf mortal ears. As I welcome you all today to Savitri Sunday, I want to share a few words from Mother and one quotation from Purani. Purani and I were very close. He gave me my first copy of Savitri, the 1952 edition, I believe it was. And here is what he says. He says the word Savitri is derived from the word Savitru, which in its turn is derived from the root su, to give birth to. The word soma, which indicates an exhilarating drink, symbolizing spiritual ecstasy or delight, is also derived from the same root, su. It links, therefore, the creation and the delight of creation. Savitru, therefore, means the divine creator, one who gives birth to or brings forth from himself into existence the creation. In the Veda, Savitri is the god of illumination, the god of creation. Usually he is represented by the material sun, which also illuminates the solar system and is its creator and sustainer in the material sense. Savitri, therefore, would mean etymologically someone descended from the sun. And the Aurobindo tells us this is also so, that she is the daughter of the sun. Here are three words from Mother, three comments from Mother on Savitri, and for me they have always been of greatest importance. First, Mother said to Udar Pinto, Savitri is a mantra for the transformation of the world. And then to Norman Dowsett, Mother said, for the opening of the psychic, for the growth of consciousness, and even for the improvement of English, it is good to read 1 or 2 pages of Savitri every day. And lastly, this has been the most important guidance for me, where Mother speaks to Satprem in 1963, and she says, I believe that it is his message. All the rest are preparations, but Savitri is the message. And we take that as we begin today's Savitri Sunday. Book 1, the Book of Beginnings, Canto 3, the Yoga of the Soul's Release. 5 lines from the top of the page. Inaudible to our deaf mortal ears. And inaudible here means not loud enough to be heard. The wide world rhythms wove their stupendous chant. Stupendous is of astounding force, volume, degree, or excellent, even marvelous, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable. Illimitable is simply limitless, boundless, tuning the finite to infinity. And then he says, a low muttering rose from the subconscient caves. These subconscient caves Sri Aurobindo gives us a lot on the subconscious, and I recommend that you all read as much as you can. You can look up the subconscious on our website, and it will give you many, many quotes. I will give you only today from the Synthesis of Yoga the following from Sri Aurobindo. In our yoga, we mean by the subconscious that quite submerged part of our being in which there is no wakingly conscious and coherent thought, will, or feeling, or organized reaction, but which yet receives obscurely the impressions of all things and stores them up in itself, and from it too all sorts of stimuli, all of persistent habitual movements, crudely repeated or disguised in strange forms, can surge up into dream or into the waking nature. And then he says in his letters on yoga, just as the higher consciousness is superconscient to us and supports all our spiritual possibilities and nature, so the subconscious is the basis of our material being and supports all that comes up in the physical nature. And he calls it the submental base of the being, made up of impressions, instincts, habitual movements that are stored there. And it keeps all of those movements. And then the next line, after this, a low muttering rose from the subconscious caves, the stammer of the primal ignorance. Wow. A stammer, of course, is a way of speaking characterized by faltering, involuntary pauses, or repetitions. And primal is the first in time, original, primeval. So this stammer of the primeval ignorance arises. But there's an answer to that inarticulate questioning. We mean by inarticulate, not uttered or emitted with intelligent modulations or expressions. And what happens after that? Oh, this powerful line. They're stooped with lightning neck and thunder's wings, a radiant hymn to the inexpressible. So we have the term hymn, and there are many terms in music that Sri Aurobindo continually uses. Today we'll do two of them. Hymn being a song of praise or a song of thanksgiving to God or a deity. Of course, the inexpressible, Sri Aurobindo capitalizes the I, and we always have to keep our attention focused on these capitalizations, because the inexpressible is not capable of being uttered or even described in words. And the anthem of the superconscient light. Well, so we had a hymn, a song of praise, and an anthem, which is a song of devotion or patriotism or gladness. So we see the differences in the hymn and the anthem. Hymn is mainly a song, but an anthem can be that of praise, devotion, patriotism, or gladness. So we understand this difference now. And I want to continue with these lines. All was revealed there, none can here express. Vision and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols more veridical than fact. Now, Sri Aurobindo puts in here the word veridical, which is truthful, real, actual, genuine. So these fables and these symbols are more truthful, more real, even than fact. In this realm where Ashwapati is at present. And then there are 4 lines that I will talk about only briefly. Or were truths enforced by supernatural seals. Period. Immortal eyes approached and looked in his, and beings of many kingdoms neared and spoke. The ever-living, whom we name as dead, could leave their glory beyond death and birth to utter the wisdom which exceeds all phrase. I can share here an experience of mine that I had in my second darshan of Sri Aurobindo in the subtle physical plane. The Lord was walking to me and speaking with 2 people. One was Nolini, alive, and one, I believe, was Purani, who passed away in the same year as my experience, and he was dead. And yet, Sri Aurobindo was speaking to both of them just before he came up to me. So we don't really die. And that is the great lesson I learned from this experience, and many others also. But we only change our dress as we go to our place of rest and prepare for our next birth. Then we see that the kings of evil and the kings of good, we have all known these kings as gods or demons. We have met them or passed by them cursorily. And they are appellants at the reason's judgment seat. So an appellant is one who appeals to a higher tribunal, one who entreats someone. So they are entreating Ashwapati, speaking to him. So he's hearing both sides, the side of evil and the side of good. And they are proclaiming, the line says, proclaimed the gospel of their opposites. Now, the gospel is a doctrine or a revelation from heaven or wherever. And so they are both proclaiming the gospel of their opposites. And the next line, and all believe themselves spokesmen of God. And this is something where we have to be very careful, because we also can be open to the voices of good and evil, and sometimes not knowingly. And if we listen to the wrong ones, we can be guided down the wrong path, a difficult path that's very difficult to recover from. So let us follow what they are. They are the gods of light and titans of the dark. And Sri Aurobindo has a lot to say about the titan. He often capitalizes it, but here he's using it lowercase. The titan who lives in his own inordinately magnified shadow, mistakes ego for the self and spirit, and tries to impose his fragmentary personality as the one dominant existence upon all his surroundings. This is from the synthesis of yoga. And we have many others also, for example, from Essays Divine and Human. He writes, "The old writings call the Titans the elder gods, so they still are, nor is any god entirely divine unless there is hidden in him also a Titan." And again, in Essays Divine and Human, he writes, "The mental or vital demigod, the Asura, Rakshasa, and Pisacha, Titan, vital giant, and demon." He lists them like that. Asura is the Titan, Rakshasa, vital giant, and Pisacha, demon, are superhuman in the pitch and force and movement and in the make of their characteristic nature. But these are not divine, and those not supremely divine, for they live in a greater mind power or life power only, but they do not live in the supreme truth. And only the supreme truth, capital T, is divine. Only those who live in a supreme truth consciousness and embody it are inwardly made or else remade in the divine image. So powerful. And so they are now battling for Aswapati's soul. Battled for his soul as for a costly prize. In every hour, loosed from the quiver of time. And here we have two interesting words. Loosed, freed or released from fastening or attachment. And a quiver, of course, is a portable case for holding arrows. And this word loosed is not too often used in poetry, but I want to quote two quatrains from William Butler Yeats, using the word loosed. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Now, what happens is there rises from these, from this quiver loosed, in every hour loosed, a song of new discovery. There rose a song of new discovery, a bow twang's hum of young experiment. Well, a bow twang is the resonant sound that's produced when a string is sharply plucked or suddenly released. So we see that this song of new discovery is a bow twang's hum of young experiment. And we have 4 lines here, so beautiful, that Aswapati is now experiencing. Each day was a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. There's a semicolon. So the idea continues. Adventure leaped an unexpected friend, and danger brought a keen, sweet tang of joy. Tang is a distinctive, strong, penetrating taste or flavor. So we are seeing all that he is going through, and this is just the first canto that speaks of his evolution into a seer. I'll read those lines again. Each day was a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. Adventure leaped an unexpected friend, and danger brought a keen, sweet tang of joy. Each happening was a deep experience. There were high encounters, epic colloquies. Colloquies, of course, are formal conversations or dialogues. And we found out that in Canto 2, Savitri too had these colloquies. And then the next line, and counsels came couched in celestial speech. So counsels are knowledgeable sources that give advice or guidance. And couched is a way that words are expressed, arranged, or framed. So these counsels came couched in celestial speech. And what happened then? And honeyed pleadings breathed from occult lips. And now 5 lines which hardly need any explanation. To help the heart to yield to rapture's call. And sweet temptations stole from beauty's realms, and sudden ecstasies from a world of bliss. It was a region of wonder and delight. All now his bright clairaudience could receive. So after delight, there's a period, and then we're going to see that all now his bright clairaudience could receive. Clairaudience is the power to hear sounds that exist beyond the reach of ordinary experiences or capacity. And then the next 5 lines. A contact thrilled of mighty unknown things, awakened to new unearthly closenesses. The touch replied to subtle infinities. And with the silver cry of opening gates, sight's lightnings leaped from the invisible. We see here that many times as we're going through Savitri, or we copy it into one of our notebooks or something, we'll see many words underlined that modern English does not recognize, or actually even indicates that it's in error. So closenesses is one that they don't like. Lightnings they don't like. So here Sri Aurobindo, in speaking of the illumined mind, says, this greater force, capital F, is that of the illumined mind, a mind no longer of higher thought, but of spiritual light. Here the clarity of the spiritual intelligence, its tranquil daylight, gives place or subordinates itself to an intense luster, a splendor and illumination of the spirit, a play of lightnings of spiritual truth and power, breaks from above into the consciousness and adds to the calm and wide enlightenment and the vast descent of peace which characterize or accompany the action of the larger conceptual spiritual principle, a fiery ardor of realization and a rapturous ecstasy of knowledge. This is from the life divine. Now, I'm going to close with just reading to you these lines with only one comment, because they're very clear to us. So Aswapati now, having heard the kings of good and evil, having experienced these new great openings, Sri Aurobindo tells us, ever his consciousness and vision grew. They took an ampler sweep, a loftier flight. He passed the border marked for matter's rule, and passed the zone where thought replaces life. Out of this world of signs, suddenly he came into a silent self where world was not, and looked beyond into a nameless vast. These symbol figures lost their right to live. All tokens dropped our sense can recognize. There, the heart beat no more at body's touch. There, the eyes gazed no more on beauty's shape. In rare and lucent intervals of hush, into a signless region, he could soar, packed with the deep contents of formlessness, where world was into a single being wrapped. Now he's moving much more rapidly. And the word wrapped here is not like our usual sense of wrapped, but it's deeply engrossed or absorbed, even entranced, transported with emotion, enraptured, ecstatic, even carried off spiritually to another place, another sphere of existence. And this is from the dictionary. And I'll close with these 5 lines. And all was known by the light of identity, and spirit was its own self-evidence. The Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. This will be explained much more as we continue with Aswapati's progress, his tapasya, because in time we will hear that he even hears the voices of others, feels their emotions, and can even put words into their mouths. It's a very, very beautiful passage. And today was very powerful that we could see that other voices also spoke to him. And yet he turns away from them and he hears this song of new discovery, this Bo Twang's hum of young experiment, and each day becomes a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. And then each happening was a deep experience. He has these high counters, these epic colloquies, and he hears these counsels and these pleadings from occult lips. Why? To help the heart to yield to rapture's calls. And then suddenly this clairaudience opens in him, and he can receive things that we can't even hear. Things that are so far beyond our ordinary experience or capacity. And he has this contact with unknown things, and even the touch and the sight opens in him, and his consciousness and his vision grow. And then he sees a place where world was into a single being wrapped, and everything was known by the light of identity. And spirit, capital S, was its own self-evidence. And the Supreme's, capital S, the Supreme's gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself. Note, all things, the stone, the soil, the weeds, the flowers, and creatures, the animals, birds, butterflies, humans, as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice. Such beauty. Namaste. Thank you all for joining today.
Thank you, Narad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Narad.
Thank you, Naradji.
Thank you, Naradji.
Deep gratitude.